Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our information session for Community Catalyst Grants Capital Funding Round 5. If you have not already done so, please be sure to enter your name and organization in the chat so that we can have an informal attendance. As a reminder, there are also lots of helpful links that are in the chat that we will be referencing throughout the presentation tonight. We are going to begin with some welcomes and introductions from our director, Paul Stanford, in just a moment. We will also go through tonight a thorough review of the CCG Capital Grants Program, including things like important dates, eligibility information, emerging versus established organizations, award terms, eligible and ineligible uses, and fee guidelines. We will discuss the application process itself, including how to apply, what the review process looks like, and all of those required documents, which I know is often something that people have many questions about. So we will absolutely have time to go over that information tonight. We will review the application scoring criteria, and we'll also talk a little bit about Neighborly Assistance, Neighborly being the online application portal that we utilize for all of our CCG applications. And of course, we will have time at the conclusion of the presentation to go over any questions and answers that you may have. As a reminder, this presentation is being recorded. The recording and the slide deck will be published to the CCG website no later than next week for your reference. So tonight's presentation, along with tonight's slide deck, those will be available for public viewing as soon as tomorrow, as late as early next week. And also as a reminder, please be sure to type any questions that you have during the chat. While we may respond to some of them in the chat in real time, if your question is not answered at the moment, I promise you we will be coming back to those questions at the end of the presentation to make sure that we're addressing all of the questions and concerns that you may have. Okay. I think that is all for me for the administrative stuff. So I'm going to hand things over to Paul Stanford, our director.
Yeah, so good evening or late afternoon, everyone. Paul Stanford here, Director of Grants Administration with the City of Baltimore Department of Housing and Community Development. So again, thank you all for being interested in this opportunity to apply for the upcoming CCG Capital Round. All three members on this team, which consists of Casey Chisholm, Felicia Harris, and Lisa Kiernan, have been huge advocates since they've been with the agency on this program. They've played a huge part in seeing this program grow over the last several years, as well as being huge advocates within the leadership team of DHCD to ensure that this program continues to get the funding that it much definitely deserves. Because the CCG program plays a huge impact, as many of you are aware of on this on this call, towards home ownership projects, rental projects, commercial projects, and other wide variety of capital projects that allows you all to be able to meet whatever goals that you have for your projects to get funded and to be a success. So again, I thank you all and I wish you all luck through this entire application process. Again, please be mindful of the deadlines that will be discussed, as well as is on our NOFA for application submission, to ensure that you complete your application successfully so you can have that opportunity to possibly receive CCG funds for this funding round. So with that, I'll pass it on to the team members to introduce themselves directly. But again, thank you all for joining us this evening, and I look forward to some of the feedback and comments that we receive after this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. So as Paul said, my name is Casey Chisholm. I am one of the grant managers with the Community Catalyst Grants Program.
Hi, my name is Felicia Harris. I am also a grant manager with the CCG program.
And hello, my name is Lisa Kiernan, and I'm also one of the grant managers managing CCG.
All right, so we're going to jump into the fun part. Well, kind of. This is talking about the program overview. So in 2018, DHCD established the Community Catalyst Grants Program to provide support to assist organizations in historically disinvested communities. These communities are predominantly low income, minority, have suffered from low housing values, high rates of vacancy and abandonment, poverty, crime, and public health problems, and may have received less public and private investment than other communities. Community Catalyst grants are intended to value neighborhoods, promote equity, and community development in long disinvested neighborhoods, as well as be flexible. Through this round of CCG, for round 5, NOFA will be, DHCD is making up to $2 million in capital funding available for projects that are crucial to locally driven community revitalization projects. Who can apply? Nonprofits, CDCs, neighborhood groups, merchant associations, and other 501c3 or 501c6 status or physical sponsorships and partnerships. What kinds of projects are eligible? Capital work like pre-development, acquisition, rehab, new construction, homeowner stabilization, and more. We're going to go over a more express list a little later. As well as the total project cost limit is $4 million, as well as the city funding limit may not exceed 30% of the total development costs. Okay, so here are some important dates to remember. These can also be found within the NOFA, within the application. One of the biggest things that we wanted to highlight is that the submission deadline is October 3rd at 2025, and it's at 5 p.m. So that means that Neighborly will cut off all applications at 5 p.m. and we will not be accepting any emails or anything or any late submissions. Okay, the goals of the capital grants. Some of the goals are to reduce blight in neighborhoods where blight removal will increase private market interest, create opportunities to attract new residents, support citywide planning initiatives, create a diversity of uses, and enhance the quality of life for current residents, encourage innovative energy efficient technology, support mixed income housing, strengthen the connection between health and housing, provide gap funding, loan guarantees, and or other financing that moves a project forward, supports projects that include community ownership and participatory decision-making and benefit local and minority/women-owned business enterprises, as well as fund projects that will increase wealth building in disinvested communities. Eligible applicants. Eligible applicants include community development corporations, umbrella organizations, neighborhood revitalization organizations, faith-based organizations, merchant associations, and other organizations that have a valid 501c3 and 501c6 status, or that have received a temporary determination from the IRS. Organizations that do not have a 501c3 or 501c6 status can apply through an eligible partner applicant that must be the primary or has a physical agent. Eligible applicants must provide proof of their business entity status of good standing with the state of Maryland, which is SDAT. And DHCD reserves the right to require organizations with an annual budgets of $100,000 or less, or who have been operating for 12 or fewer months to identify a physical agent or partner with an eligible applicant. Okay. Scroll back up for me, Casey. I'm sorry. The chat had popped up. I couldn't see. So for-profit developers may apply for a grant provided that they are partnered with an eligible primary applicant. So the grants are more steered towards individuals that who have a nonprofit status or 501c6 status. And if you are a for-profit developer, you will have to partner with an applicant that has that status. Okay, so just to go over the definition of emerging versus established, because we ironed out the definition a little bit more because I know for past years it was a little confusing. So for one of the determinations is that does your organization annual revenue, is it greater than 2 million? Consider all grants, donations, contributions, and earned income. If it is yes, then you are automatically an established organization. If no, then you must meet one of the following criteria below. Is your organization headquartered or is your project located in a Baltimore City community experiencing high vacancy rates? If it's yes, then you're emerging. If no, then has your organization completed at least 5 capital development projects? If yes, you're established. If no, you're emerging. To highlight it on this side as well, community catalyst grants are intended for emerging organizations. Applicants who are classified as emerging are eligible to apply for up to 200,000, while established applicants are only eligible for 150,000. Or less. Less can be in both categories. Applicants will self-identify whether they qualify as emerging or established organization and must submit documentation justifying their classification. Organizations with a total revenue of under 2 million and who meet at least one of the following criteria are considered emerging for the purposes of community catalyst grants. So just what I said from the diagram. DHCD reserves the right to modify an applicant's self-identified classification during the threshold review. And we'll talk about more about the threshold review later in the presentation. Okay, so for the capital grant award amounts and terms, projects cannot exceed 4 million in total development costs. Awardees must execute a formal agreement with the BOE. Awarded funds must be spent within a 24-month period from the date of execution. At least 55% of the available funds will be awarded to emerging organizations and not more than 45% to established organizations. Applicants with 2 active existing capital community catalyst awards are not eligible to apply for capital funding in round 5. City funds, meaning that if you have grants or funding from another city, Baltimore City funding source, it cannot comprise of more than 30% of your total development costs. As well as applicants as well as grantees must comply with all city regulations. Site control. Yesterday we had a big question about site control, so we're going to discuss a little bit more. Because CCG is funded with city budget dollars, funds cannot be used to acquire city-owned property or make improvements until after the title transfer. So until the grantee owns the property, we are not able to issue any funds. Acceptable forms of site control, depending on the project type, may include privately owned property, title deed, executed contract of sale, option to purchase, and or an approved land LDA, so land disposition agreement. Non-city owned rental, a signed lease that clearly states the rights/limits of for capital improvements, including a letter from the landlord accompanied with the lease. Subrecipient projects, homeowner repair, a MOU or contract with the homeowner, and city-owned property, an approved LDA or vacancy to value application. Title must be transferred before any funds can be released under a funding agreement. Applicants must demonstrate feasible site control at the time of the application and the ability to take title within 12 months of executing a funding agreement. DHCD cannot provide project-specific recommendations on how an applicant should establish site control for their submissions. Okay, so for eligible uses, it's a more express list within the NOFA. I'm just going to talk about several of them. Some of the bigger ones, which is pre-development costs, but not limited to studies, surveys, zoning changes, carrying costs, consultants and staff. I just want to highlight that really quick. For consultants and staff, which is the general operating support. The general operating support, which is to staff and consultants, cannot be over 20% of your CCG award. Unfortunately, we're not offering any operating fund, NOFAs this round. So with that, if you guys decide to use a portion of this for operating, that operating staff or that consultant must be focusing on a capital project. If they are not focused on a capital project, we will not be able to approve it. Some other ones is acquisition of non-city owned property, stabilization or construction, that is a large part of a larger development. Commercial tenant improvements to facilitate social distancing in commercial spaces, new construction, project that reduce the impact of environmental inequities, bridge loans, and I think that's about it for that. Ineligible uses, acquisition of city-owned properties, acquisition of properties through the receivership process, relocation, general operating support, repayment of existing loans or liens, community gardens, commercial facade improvements, public art, charter schools, projects that support a specific religious affiliation and or that support political actions, causes, advocacies, or parties. And that's about it. Okay, so to discuss the fee guidelines, developer fees and physical agent fees. So the developers may structure their fees as they see fit for the overall project. However, only a portion of the CCG funds may be used to pay those fees, as outlined below. If it's a home ownership project, up to 5% of the total CCG award. Rental projects is up to 10%. Non-residential projects is the fee-based developer fees will be negotiated after a funding award is made. For fiscal agents, only a portion again may be used to pay those fees. Fiscal agent fees paid by CCG grant funds may not exceed 10% of the total CCG award. And should be included as a budget line item on the capital budget template. Fiscal agent role may include oversight, financial reporting, fund disbursement, compliance tracking, administrative support, and coordination with DHCD. Duplication of fiscal agent services with other paid roles may not be paid from CCG grant funds. Fiscal agent have the option to either not accept a fee from their partner or donate that fee back to their partner if desired. DHCD may require that a portion of the fiscal agent fee and or the developer fee be deferred as a part of the funding agreement. DHCD also reserves the right to modify fees during the award process. And I'm turning it over to Lisa.
All right. Thanks, Felicia. All right, Casey, next slide, please. Okay, how to apply. So everything is through the Neighborly software portal. When you set up your application, your reporting later on, if you are, sorry, I'm having a little brain fog. Everything is through Neighborly. Applications are all submitted through Neighborly. All of the documentation that is related to your application is through Neighborly. It's very user-friendly. You're able to go in there and set up a username and password, and you can also add anybody else on your team that may need to do that. Just make sure that whatever you are uploading, October 3rd by 5 p.m. is our cutoff date. That's a hard cutoff date. And then things sometimes can be a little bit slow the last day. So please don't wait until the very last minute. We did have things freezing a little bit last year or a year and a half ago when we did round 4. So I would highly recommend getting in there before the last day. And that way too, you have the ability to go back and just double check that you've submitted everything, you've completed everything, everything is accurate, and it's just your own home check. So the review process for all submitted applications is we go through a threshold review, which means that, and we'll explain these in a little bit more detail in the upcoming slides. So we go through a threshold review, which is the initial review of your application and all your documentation. Once we have reviewed everything there, we start scoring on your project readiness. Once the grants management team has reviewed everything for project readiness and we feel that you are able to move forward, your application is able to be moved forward, we have a panel review of multiple people, both from DHCD and other agencies, that will review everything, ask questions, go through detail by detail of your application, your project. There'll be recommendations made by the panel. Sometimes we may have additional questions for you. So it is not unusual for us to reach back out to you and let you know that we're in the middle of reviewing via panel and that we need to have a little bit more explanation or additional information. Once everyone's applications have gone through the panel review, we make our recommendations. We submit everything to leadership, and the housing commissioner determines, along with upper leadership, the amounts of the awards and the final applicants, and then we announce via award letter to each of you that are receiving a CCG award. So threshold criteria. Threshold review is an administrative check to confirm that everything on the application is complete, correct, and that all documentation that we require has been submitted. To be eligible for scoring, applicants must submit all required documents in the NOFA, and there will be a link to that, and it's also in the chat, so you're able to review all the required documents. For threshold review, each application will be screened for completeness and accuracy. So when we, as the grant managers, do our initial threshold review, if you have 3 or fewer documents that are missing, incorrect, or incomplete, we do give you the opportunity with a limited amount of time to cure. So we give you the opportunity to submit that missing, incorrect, or incomplete information because we feel sometimes it's just minor, but it's enough where we do need that information in order to complete your application review. If for applications that have 4 or more required documents that are missing, incorrect, or incomplete, unfortunately, those applications will not be considered eligible, and we're not able to move forward with scoring or award consideration on those. So please make sure that, again, before that deadline, your information is absolutely as accurate as possible. So for your application, as a grantee, you would be the primary applicant. If you have a partner that you are partnering with so that you're eligible to have an application considered, there are also requirements for that. And if you partner with a fiscal agent, we will also go over what requirements would be necessary there. As a primary applicant, we need to make sure that you have a project readiness narrative, that you have your project leader resumes listed, your evidence of site control. There is a budget template that is 6 tabs that does need to be completed. And we're going to just go ahead and give you a snapshot of what that looks like. Now, being that most of the applicants that are coming in for CCG funding, we understand that probably the majority of these applicants are going to be emerging. And so we do understand that you wear multiple hats and that you may not have an accountant or a finance manager on staff. And so please don't be overwhelmed by the budget template. It is necessary to go through and complete it to the best of your ability. You want to list your entire budget for your project, but then you also want to list the individual properties that would be within your project. And then we want to see how you are utilizing your CCG funds. So if you're an emerging organization, for example, and you say you have a $1 million budget for your entire project, you would complete tabs B and tabs I. So you would want to list out everything that is applicable to your project. And there are going to be a lot of line items here, and not everything is going to be applicable to your individual project. So to the best of your ability, complete those tabs, those columns. And then over on the far right side, under column K, your total CCG round 5 capital, this is where you would demonstrate how you want to utilize the funding. So we understand that you may not know, or you're not going to know, how much funding you've received yet. But in an ideal world, if you were awarded, say, the full 200,000 as an emerging organization or the full 150,000 as an established organization, you do want to demonstrate how you would use that funding. Along with this first tab on the budget, just make sure that there are formulas populated in there. So just please go through and make sure everything ties out. And then also in columns K through P, we want to see all of your funding sources for this particular project. So if you have $1 million project and beyond the ideal world, $200,000 that you receive for CCG funding, we need to see where the other $800,000 would be coming from. So to your best ability, complete how all of that other funding would come in, whether it's through donations to your organization, loans, other grant awards, fundraising, whatever that situation may be. Maybe you're being gifted funds from a fiscal agent, a fiscal partner. That would also be a way as demonstrating how that funding is coming in. And on the second tab, the funding sources tab, we would like to see you elaborate on that. So we want to see how much of that money is listed out, and that should tie out to the first tab. For the remaining 4 tabs, personnel, pro forma, rent rates, and home ownership, please complete these as applicable to your project. So if you have personnel costs, this is a capital award, but up to 20% of your budget for your CCG funds can be applied to operating costs. Operating capital costs would be items like rehabbing or stabilization, development. Soft costs would be pre-development costs, like say hiring an architect or design. Any of those items would fall under capital. For operating, that would be your general and administrative. So items like hiring a third party, an accountant, having staff that is completely designated to handle your CCG funding or to handle this project. Hiring, insurance costs, security, cameras, things like that. So any of those items would fall under your operating costs. And so up to 20% of your budget can be allocated to operating. So for personnel, if you hired a consultant or if you have staff, that's where you would list all of those folks. And then the other 3 tabs, just make sure that you complete those. If it's not applicable, just put not applicable on the top of the tab. Go ahead, Casey. Scope and schedule. So your scope of work should, there is a template also available to complete. If you want to add additional information to this, we welcome that. Anything that helps explain what your project is and what the goals of your project are is helpful to us. And the more that you can give us detail and elaborate on that, the better. The CCG award, you have 24 months to spend that down. So we need to see that that's how long you would have to spend those funds down. And then in your timeline, give us a bit of a calendar or give us a bit of a schedule to show us how you would spend those funds over time, but also what your schedule looks like. Whereas say maybe maybe it's a brand new project. So maybe in months 1 to 3, you're working with other community associations in the neighborhood that you're, say, rehabbing a block. And so you want to just give us some detail as far as how you're working with those people, and then also what the next goal is. So now maybe you have your funding in place. In months 4 through 6, you're working on hiring your architect and doing design and picking out the particular homes that you're going to be rehabbing in the first 6 months or 12 months of your project. So just to give you an idea of what we're looking for schedule. Other items that we need from the primary applicant are project impact narrative, the community engagement narrative, achieving equity narrative, and you can also be considered for bonus points. All of these documents, when you log into Neighborly, are there. There's an explanation, and they're pretty self-explanatory. So you should be able to just read through those and, again, answer to your best of your ability. If you are the primary applicant, but you are a very, very small organization and you need the assistance of partnering with another organization, whether that's as a primary applicant, you're a 501c3, you're a nonprofit. As the partner applicant, perhaps that's your developer, perhaps it's another organization that's much larger and can maybe guide you through this project. Maybe it's the first time that you're doing some type of project like this, and so you want assistance. So through here, these are some of the financial requirements that DHCD needs to see in order to demonstrate the quality of the organization, to also demonstrate that financially stable, and then also to show that the size of your organization, since we've broken down everything and been more defined with emerging versus established. So please make sure that you have a recent Form 990, which is your tax return. Make sure that your financial statements are audited based on the size of your budget, and that would be your organization's budget. Please make sure that your documentation is not older than 2023. And then also, if you are smaller organizations, just make sure that you have an up-to-date balance sheet, income statement, and the overall annual budget. So this will give you a little bit more detail based on the size of your organization and based on whether or not you're applying as a solo applicant, or if you're partnering with someone, or if you're also partnering with a fiscal agent, which would be somebody who is helping support you financially for your project. All of these items are the documents that are going to be in Neighborly when you fill out your application. So just to touch on a few of these, your certification and authorization to submit, which will be an attachment in the Neighborly portal, your corporate resolution and your board approval, which is something that you would upload. You would upload your articles of incorporation, your IRS determination letter proving that you are a 501c3 or a 501c6, evidence of good standing in the state of Maryland. So you must be a Maryland established organization. And if you partner with anyone, or if you have a fiscal partner, those organizations must also be in the state of Maryland. A list of your board of directors, your organizational chart, and then owned property disclosure and certification of compliance. If you have an agreement, if you decide to partner with another organization, or you have a fiscal partner, fiscal agent, you also need to have upload a copy of the agreement that demonstrates the relationship between you and that partnership. And that is it for my section.
Thank you so much, Lisa. All right, I'm going to now move into the application scoring criteria and the application itself. The basic scoring for our CCG Round 5 capital applications add up to a total of 200 points, and they're broken down into 4 base categories: project readiness, project impact, community engagement, and achieving equity. So let's talk a little bit more about each of these categories and what kinds of things you can expect to be including. All right. Project readiness is a really critical section. Most of the documents that we've been talking about, that Felicia has been speaking about, or that Lisa has been speaking about, really are documents that go towards this assessment of project readiness. So what you're going to do is really help us determine whether the project you're proposing is feasible financially, from a scheduling perspective, from a staffing perspective. You need to show us your relevant experience. You could include things about past projects that are similar in size or complexity. You want to include resumes for team members, particularly those who are managing the projects. It's really critical that you fill out that CCG capital budget template very thoroughly, but the budget also has to be realistic. Make sure you're including all of those funding sources, your clear schedule. All of those site control documents come into play here. Ultimately, when you think about project readiness, this is the nuts and bolts of your project. Project impact is where you will explain what your project is, who it will benefit, and why it matters. This is your opportunity to be clear about your vision and about how your project will create positive change in Baltimore City. You want to show how your project supports community development goals, how it supports city priorities, things like affordable housing, revitalization, any way that you can demonstrate this is my project, and this is how we see it impacting positively the city as a whole. We highly recommend that you try to tie back things in your project to your framework for community development, to our framework for community development as well. I also just want to caution everyone, please remember, one of the most common issues that we see in scoring is that there are times where review panelists are a little bit confused as to what the project actually is. What are the actual goals? What's considered a success? So when you're putting together your project readiness narrative and your project impact vision and summary, please make sure that it's extremely clear what the project looks like to you, what success will look like for you and for the project as well. The next section that you'll be scored on is community engagement and participation. This is really critical to highlight because it's right in the name of the program itself. Community Catalyst Grant, community engagement and participation. You need to explain to us how community members have a real, actual voice in your project. Maybe that means residents are serving on your board or involved in key design-making decisions. You ideally want to explain how you have engaged community members and how you will continue to do so in a strategic manner. Be reminded that a community engagement plan is a plan, not just a philosophy of saying, well, we like to talk to our community. What are the action items that will happen within your project structurally to make sure that the community has a voice? If you have letters of community support from different individuals or organizations, please feel free to upload those in this section. It is not a requirement, but I know that oftentimes you have partners in your community, and if you have letters of support, please feel free to include those as a supplemental piece. And the last major section of the base application is achieving equity. Baltimore City and Mayor Scott firmly believe in achieving equity as a key pillar of this program. And so we are committed to using these CCG funds to reduce financial, social, and economic disparities that affect many of our city neighborhoods. In your Achieving Equity narrative, your job will be to describe how your project will directly address disparities in a particular area. That could be things like lack of investment, health disparities, racial or financial inequities. Utilize data where you can, but ultimately explain how the alignment of your project will directly, positively improve those gaps for those populations. There are also bonus points available depending on your project. These are open to anyone. However, please be advised that you must specifically apply for all bonus points. Even if your project does qualify, if you do not actually upload the documentation and the justification for each of these bonus points, you will not be considered for them. So please do take a look at those. For each of these, both in the application and in the PDF of the notice of funding availability, there's full details about what you need for each one of these to justify earning those bonus points. But just as a quick preview, there is a vacant building impact bonus where you can receive additional points if you are remediating buildings with VBNs. There is a strategic city area alignment bonus if you are operating your project in a high need area that aligns with one of many city priorities. If your project supports local businesses or community spaces, if it engages workforce or instructional programming, or if it's a collaboration across multiple neighborhoods, those are all ways that you could earn additional points on your application. And I will also just remind you that these applications are incredibly competitive. We always have wonderful projects, far more wonderful and deserving projects than we have funds available to grant. So those bonus points really could make a key difference in your ultimate ranking and funding. So if you qualify for any of those, really encourage you to upload any of that supporting documentation required for those. For Neighborly, Neighborly is our application portal. There are two things that I'm going to offer to you just to help make things a little easier for you as you go through. I am not going to go through the entire application. I've done that in years past, but we have many returning applicants. And I think that this updated tutorial is going to be a little simpler for everybody to follow along with. So the first thing I want to point out to you is that there is a quick start guide that is available to you. All of the links that I am talking about, or any of the links that my colleagues have been speaking to you about throughout tonight's presentation, can all be found on our Community Catalyst Grants website. So you'll notice the full funding NOFA availability is here for you. We have the information about the guides. This is also where the slide deck from tonight's presentation, as well as the recording of tonight's meeting, will be publicly posted for you. I saw someone asking in the chat if they'll get the presentation. You absolutely will. But also, very importantly, if you scroll down, there are also all of the supporting application documents. So if you're ever looking for a document or a template, this is a quick way for you to locate it. I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of where you can find those things. So the Neighborly, sorry about that. Linked to the wrong one. Oh my goodness. There we go. So the Neighborly tutorial that we have for you is very easy to navigate, and I'm hopeful that it will really help people do what they need to do. The first thing that I want to point out to you is that there is a working, clickable table of contents, essentially. So if you're working through your application and you're going, I just need to know what the heck I'm supposed to do for the applicant classification section. You can scroll down, you can click on that button, and it will zoom you right to the part of this tutorial that you're looking for. So I did just want to make sure that you are all aware of that. But this guide will really navigate you through exactly where to go for the website, how to create an account, how to navigate the dashboard, starting a new application, where to find everything that you need, even including things like how to upload documents or how to add additional users. So all of that is here for you. But I also just want to say, if you have any technical questions as you are going through Neighborly, please feel free to email us at that CCG email account, and we are more than happy to get back to you and try to answer any technical questions that you have. All right, and in the meantime, we do have some time to go over questions and answers. So I think what we're going to do is scroll back to the top of the chat and just sort of go through and make sure that we have addressed all of those as needed. If you still have a question, please put it in the chat and we will get to it as we are able. Felicia and Lisa, did you want to unmute?
All right, looking through here real quick. Been dropping answers in the chat. Let's see if we have anything else. One specific question was, are previously spent funds, for example, acquisition, stabilizations, etc., included in total development costs with regard to the 30% cap on city funds?
So what I would say is that frequently very large projects are divided up into phases or sections. And so you could certainly apply to CCG for one particular phase of a project. And so you would just have to make that very clear in your scope and schedule, outlining essentially like the start and end dates of expenditures that would qualify.
Also, if it's for that specific project, yes, because that it will be a repetitive, or basically repeating of the funds for those services. So say for example, if you got a grant from what's another agency like DPW for that project in regards to sweeping the neighborhood or something like that. That would be a duplication of services if you were to apply for the same grant here or the same project here, and we wouldn't be able to it wouldn't be eligible at that point.
Can't double dip.
Correct.
I think it is kind of the way to think about that. So but yeah, if it's something, it really is project specific, but there are ways that does work and there's ways that it doesn't. You would just have to be really clear in your scope and schedule, and especially if you're trying to do something with like phases, being especially clear about what was and was not financed and where it came from, so that, like Felicia said, we can ensure that, you know, we're not paying for the same roof twice, for example.
Correct.
Okay, next question from Danielle Buxton. Can you clarify, this has to do with site control. So can you clarify the address portion of the grant? If you're still in the process of acquiring or using grant funds for property acquisition and you don't actually have the address yet, can the grant be used for that?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is it a city-owned property? If you are looking to purchase city-owned properties, as a reminder, we cannot give you CCG funding towards acquisition of those properties. However, if you know that you're going to be looking into acquiring non-city-owned properties, my recommendation on like the budget would be to include things and just say like property 1, property 2, property 3, But in your scope and schedule, you would want to make clear what is going to be your process for identifying properties and then pursuing that site control. Because again, the expectation is that you would be able to take title within 12 months and get working on the actual construction to maintain pace. So if you don't know the addresses that you're seeking to acquire yet, that could potentially raise a flag for project readiness, just as a heads up.
The next question was, can you clarify the faith-based prohibition? Faith-based orgs are eligible, but they cannot use the funds for development of their facilities. They can only use it for external development. Yes. So we are not able to support any religious buildings or any religious causes or projects. We're only able to support community projects. So if the organization has a community kitchen that they would like to start, that's eligible. If they have some properties that are eligible for the community to apply for, that's eligible. But we cannot support development of a church or anything such as that.
Right. So spiritual faith-based groups can do projects as long as they are secular in nature.
As in, if they have a community development corporation on.
Someone had asked about defining fiscal manager. So fiscal agents, I know Felicia spoke a little bit about those roles and things, and Lisa did as well. Generally, though, just as a reminder, you only need a primary applicant to apply. You may apply with a partner and or a fiscal agent. Fiscal agents are required if you're unable to financially manage your own project, but we also have had groups that even are more established who prefer to work with a fiscal agent. So that's completely fine and up to you. The one thing I want to remind you about for your partner applicants, just because they are someone that you're working with, like a developer or contractor, you do not have to include them as a partner on your application unless they are like a co-owner of the project.
So Casey, real quick, they said, what are fiscal agents?
I think we ended up talking about that because so that question originally came in before you had talked about the fees and the rules and requirements.
It just came in again from iPhone. What are fiscal agents?
Gotcha. I'm not seeing that in my chat. So essentially a fiscal agent is an experienced organization that helps grantees maintain compliance with their financial and reporting requirements associated with the award. Lisa, do you have a better definition than that? You're our finance.
I mean, it's
person.
that, but it's your fiscal agent. It's when your organization or your project is too small and you're not able. An example would be there's somebody who's basically backing you financially. Say it would be a hardship for your organization to pay $500,000 for expenses, whereas your fiscal agent may be able to partner with you and foot the bill, but at the same time, you're as a nonprofit, you're the one that's eligible for the grant. So if you partner with someone who's financially a larger financial organization than you are, and maybe more experienced as well, then you can still work towards your project and fulfill that goal of seeing your project come to fruition, but you partner with someone financially to help support you. And in return, there's usually a fee that's paid to that fiscal agent, that fiscal partner.
I see someone asked about the Neighborly platform allowing you to save. Absolutely. You can save and come back as much as you want. There's two options essentially at the bottom of every page of the application. One is save and one is complete and submit. So until you hit complete and submit, that's just for you. We're not looking at them yet. We aren't looking at anything until you hit submit. So feel free to go in and edit and change and revise and do whatever you need to do with that. Also, if you check out the tutorial that I linked for you, it goes through and shows you exactly how to save, how to submit, and even some of the little icon indicators that Neighborly uses to let you know like what you've looked at, what you've saved, what you've turned in. So please take a look at that tutorial and it should give you some assistance there.
And then just to touch a little bit more on the fiscal agent question. So your accountant is there to perform accounting duties and financial duties, but is not your financial backer, is not your financial partner. Your accountant is either a staff person or your third-party consultant that you work with to perform accounting and financial duties.
We had a follow-up question. Do faith-based organizations must have a CDC?
I was answering it in the chat. So faith-based organizations can apply, but must be a 501c3. Some, if not most, faith-based orgs that apply have a CDC branch with their organizations.
The ability to partner, someone asked if we have a local contractor as a partner, is that allowed? Yes. However, just make sure that you actually want their name on the grant agreement. So if you put someone in as a partner applicant, what that means is that it's going to say, this is a grant agreement between Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development and my organization and that other organization. So if it's just that you want to partner with them, like hire them, have them be your main contractor, but they're completely under your direction and the project belongs to you, then I would not include them as a partner applicant. However, if they're going to have a lot of involvement, if they have, ownership and say over it, then you may wish to include them as a partner applicant. That's going to just be up to you and your specific project.
Also,
Casey, the
please
next...
make sure, I was going to say also just
Yeah.
please make sure that whoever, if you do decide to partner with someone, make sure that they are located in the state of Maryland, that they are in good standing, and that they are financially stable.
All people, primary applicant, fiscal agent, partner applicant, every single one, if you're one of those three, you must supply all financial and organizational documents that are legally required and listed in the NOFA.
And if you guys do not, then it will count towards those 3 or more documents that will disqualify in the threshold review. The next question is, can I partner with my local Main Street organization for my project? Unfortunately, no, because the Baltimore Main Street program is also a city program and is under the ineligible uses. Ineligible applicants, if you was in the NOFA, Casey? I feel like it's in the beginning.
Yes, sorry, my computer is being so slow with this share, so I'm trying to get it to show me my other slides here for you.
Yes. So activities receiving funds through Baltimore Main Streets program. So they would not be eligible.
And again, that goes to that concept of paying funds towards the same project. Like it's a redundancy concern.
Yeah, it's like, we would take our pot of money, walk down the hallway to another office, and then give them that pot of money. It doesn't work like that.
All right. It is 6:35. Does anyone have any other questions that need to be addressed? If so, please drop them in the chat now. I do community service for my primary residence that I own. Am I eligible for funding? If you meet all of the other eligibility requirements, such as having organizational documents, bylaws, 501c3, yes. If you do not, you would need to find a partner or fiscal agent that you would partner with. All right, well, I think at this time, I'm not seeing any other questions come up in the chat. If you do have any additional questions, you can always reach us at our CCG inbox. I'm going to put that up on the screen in just a moment.
Casey, the question just came in.
Sure.
It's mainly a Lisa question. Oh, she answered it. Okay.
So yes, the long story short is, even if you are, a really small organization and you're utilizing like a fiscal agent or a partner's documents for things like a 990 or your 501c3 status, whatever, that's fine. But you still have to provide all the other things like your budget, your balance sheet, your organizational layout, your board, or who acts as a board for you and makes decisions on behalf of the organization. So those are things to keep in mind. All right. If you have any additional questions, we invite you to please contact us at dhcd.ccg@baltimorecity.gov. As a reminder, we will be posting the video of this session as well as the slide deck from tonight's presentation to the website, possibly tomorrow, but no later than early next week. We will also be posting and publishing answers to any of those submitted written questions to the website as well. So please check that out if you have any other concerns. All right. Thank you all so much for attending. I'm going to stop the recording. We appreciate your time tonight.